Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you, big deal for me. Why invite me just to make a point of shutting me out? My name is Ryan. I'm 34 from Cincinnati, Ohio. Up until that evening, I honestly believed my wife's family at least kept up the act of tolerating me. That dinner ended the illusion. It was a Thursday. I know because I skipped a late client call to be there. Downtown, the Elcott, the kind of place with only valet parking and waiters in black ties. Melissa, my wife, had mentioned a family get-together. She hadn't technically asked me to come. It was more implied. I put on a navy jacket and a crisp shirt, the kind of combo that wouldn't earn an immediate sneer from Cynthia, my mother-in-law. At the stand, the host glanced up when I said my name. Ryan Bennett. I expected a nod and an open hand to lead me to the table. Instead, he frowned at the ledger. Sorry, sir. I'm not seeing a reservation under that name. Try Whitmore, I said. My father-in-law. I'm meeting them. He scanned again, then tapped the page. 6 for Mr. Peter Whitmore. They're already seated. Already seated. I followed his nod. There they were in a half-moon booth by the window. Melissa, her parents, her 2 sisters, dressed to impress, laughing like a catalog photo for effortless family harmony. Ryan, a voice purred behind me. I turned. Cynthia. She stood close as if she'd timed her entrance to catch my face when the host told me I wasn't on the list. She ran her eyes over me like she'd found a scuff on a white rug. Oh, Ryan, she said, feigning surprise so badly it was an insult. You didn't think you were actually invited, did you? For a heartbeat, I wanted to laugh it off, pretend it was a joke, but the tight, polished smile said she meant every syllable. Behind her, Melissa still hadn't looked up. She stirred her drink, gaze fixed anywhere but me. Her sisters saw me. Of course they did. Then hid their smirks behind wine glasses. I stood there, hand resting on the edge of the podium like I needed it for balance. The young host shifted from foot to foot, wishing he could disappear. Cynthia leaned in, her perfume expensive and heavy. This place is a bit beyond your usual, she whispered. There's a sports bar down the block. You'd be more comfortable there. I swallowed. I'd stomached Cynthia's digs before, the snide asides, the forced pleasantries, the holiday jabs. But this wasn't a slip. This was a staged moment, crafted for effect. And then a name surfaced, one connection they didn't know existed. The kind of detail that changes the mood of a room. You look confused, Ryan, Cynthia cooed. Honestly, I thought Melissa would have told you. Melissa finally glanced up, but not at me. She studied the ring of wine in her glass like it might answer for her. Lindsay and Tara had stopped hiding their amusement. Tara covered her mouth as if that could make it polite, while Lindsay didn't bother. I hadn't moved. My knuckles were white on the podium's edge. Cynthia sighed theatrically. You should have known this wasn't your scene. Family milestone. Private. I'm family, I said. It sounded clumsy the second it left my mouth. Her smile sharpened. By marriage. Let's not overstate things. The host cleared his throat, miserable. Would you like me to check for a seat at the bar, sir? That won't be necessary, Cynthia said, flicking her hand. Ryan knows where to go. I felt it then. A click like a gear engaging. Not anger, not even hurt. Something cleaner. I had taken her contempt for years, on holidays, at birthdays, on my wedding day when she'd said, "You clean up better than I expected," and I'd smiled like it was charming. Tonight the mask slipped. This was intentional. They wanted the humiliation to land, and Melissa was letting it happen. I looked at the host. Actually, I said, brushing off my jacket sleeve, could you do me a favor? He blinked. Sure. Ask Marcus Bell to come out. Cynthia made a small sound. Marcus Bell, the owner. I nodded. Tell him Ryan Bennett is out front. He'll know. The host glanced between us, unsure whether I was bluffing. Cynthia crossed her arms. Are you serious? I met her eyes. The perfect hair, the too white smile, the hunt for a weak point. I'm just getting started. She laughed, brittle. You think you can bluff your way into this dinner? Do you know what this place is? I helped build it, I said, calm as ever. Long before you knew the name. That made her flinch. Her smile loosened. Melissa kept stirring her drink like her life depended on it. Marcus and I go back, I added. We opened his first spot together in Hyde Park. I ran the bar, he'll remember. Cynthia parted her lips, then closed them again. The host reappeared, eyes wide. Mr. Bell is on his way. Cynthia's arms fell to her sides. What is he talking about? She hissed toward Melissa. Melissa didn't answer. She didn't look up. I did. I couldn't help the smile. The best part was seconds away. The double doors swung wide. Marcus Bell, mid-50s, gray at the temples, shoulders like he could still carry a keg, stepped into the foyer. He scanned the lobby, found me, and lit up. Ryan Bennett, he boomed, grinning like he'd just spotted an old friend at a reunion. Man, it's been too long. He wrapped me in a hug, half clap on the back, half bear squeeze. Marcus, I said, letting a thread of surprise show. Didn't expect you yourself. For you? Of course. He leaned back, smiling. Last time I saw you, we were eating drywall dust and arguing over cocktail menus. And I was right, I said, smirking. You were, he laughed. Bestseller 3 years. Ask anyone. Behind me, the host looked carved from stone. Cynthia stared like she'd seen a card trick she couldn't figure out. Across the room, Melissa finally looked up. No more stirring, no more pretense. Her mouth opened, just a little. Marcus turned to the host. Get this man whatever he wants. Table, drinks, the whole menu if he's hungry. Cynthia twitched. Wait a minute. Marcus noticed her for the first time. I'm sorry, are you with Ryan? She's my mother-in-law, I said before she could. Ah. He smiled like he knew exactly what that meant. I booked a table under my husband's name, Cynthia said quickly, trying to recover. Family dinner, we weren't expecting. You've got a table, Marcus cut in, and Ryan's joining you. Excuse me? I won't have him standing here like he's not welcome. Not in my house. I fought a grin. Cynthia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. We're full, she tried. I'll have them bring another chair, Marcus said, or we'll bump the booth next to you. Ryan sits, non-negotiable. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Marcus clapped my shoulder. Come on, I'll introduce you to a couple folks. New faces from the Anderson deal. Remember that wine concept we tested in Chicago? That model runs here now. Glad to hear it. He dipped his voice a notch. If you ever want back in, there's always a place with me. Appreciate it. We chatted another minute, just enough for that table to hear, launched 3 spots together. Saved my hide more than once. Basically family. Then Marcus nodded. Get settled. Enjoy. As he left, the host found his voice. Mr. Bennett, may I show you to the table? Cynthia looked faint. I shrugged like I had nowhere else to be. Let's say hello. We walked past the stand. Melissa's gaze brushed mine. No smile, no apology. Only guilt. Tara started to speak, then thought better of it. Melissa slid over to make space. Lindsay gave me a look edged with curiosity and fear. Cynthia sat last, as if her strings had been cut. I took my time, set the napkin in my lap, sat straight, unbothered. For the first time that night, I wasn't just Melissa's husband. I was the variable they hadn't accounted for. The game had shifted. Marcus hadn't even reached the kitchen before staff moved. One brought a chair, another laid a place setting and unfolded a napkin with a flourish, like this was my usual table and I'd arrived late. It was deliberate. Marcus wanted it seen. It burned Cynthia. She flinched each time someone said, Mr. Bennett. Melissa nudged her purse aside so I could sit closer. She still hadn't spoken. The waiter returned. Would you like to see the wine list, sir? Cynthia coughed into her glass. Yes, I said lightly. The reserve page. Marcus and I go back. He keeps a couple off-menu bottles for me. The waiter nodded and all but bowed. Cynthia pasted on a smile that looked painful. "Well," she said too brightly, lifting her glass. "Isn't this a surprise?" "Sure is," I said, matching her tone. "Melissa didn't mention this was a private party," she added smoothly. "She didn't think you'd be interested. This place, well, it's not for everyone." Melissa stared at the tablecloth as though counting stitches. Tara jumped in. "So, Ryan, you and Marcus really know each other?" "I ran the bar at his first place," I said. "Trained half the staff. When he got serious about expanding, I wrote the original proposal that brought in his early partners." Lindsay blinked. "So you're in the business?" "I was," I said. "I still consult." "Actually," I added, "I helped secure the permit for this building." Cynthia couldn't help herself. "Well, bartending and consulting are different." "You're right," I said, smiling, "which is why I billed a 5-figure fee for the permit work." She froze. Melissa's glass clicked against the table. "And I didn't invoice for the introductions," I said mildly. "That would have been tacky." Cynthia tried to laugh. "Some people just know the right people." "I didn't luck into it," I said. "I worked for every connection. Not everyone is born with a Rolodex." She narrowed her eyes. "Some of us understand legacy." "Then you should check who funded it," I said evenly. Melissa flinched. Tara frowned. "What do you mean?" I took a sip of water. "Cynthia, remember when your son-in-law needed a capital infusion for his software startup a few years back?" "That's not relevant," she snapped. "It is if I wrote the check," I said, folding my napkin. "Peter was 2 weeks from defaulting on a bridge loan. I stepped in quietly. No parade." Tara and Lindsay turned to their mother. Cynthia's jaw tightened. "That's ancient history." "Strange," I said, "since he still sends me quarterly updates on my stake." Melissa finally looked at me, wide-eyed, more realization than anger. The silence stretched. "Anyway," I said, leaning back, "I'm glad to be here. Family dinners matter." The waiter arrived with a rare Bordeaux Marcus used to keep locked up and began to pour. Cynthia looked like she might throw her glass. "Service industry types shouldn't," she began. "Cynthia," I said gently, "you might want to double-check who makes nights like this happen. People like me are the reason this works." She pressed her lips together. Melissa kept her eyes down, ears flushed red. She'd underestimated me for years of letting her mother orchestrate, assuming I would absorb the hit. That ended tonight. Cynthia wasn't steering anymore. I let the quiet sit. Melissa's wine went untouched. Tara and Lindsay ping-ponged their looks between their mother and me. Cynthia gripped her fork like it had wronged her. I met her eyes and smiled. Not smug, just true. "You know, Cynthia," I said, setting my napkin down, "I've never brought any of this up. Not once. Not the investments. Not the favors. Not the hand-holding." She gave a tight smile. "And yet, here we are." "Here we are," I said. "So let's be clear." I leaned forward. "I didn't marry into wealth. I married into your family." "That's the same thing," she muttered. "It isn't," I said, sharper now. "What you never understood is that I worked for every inch I have." Tara shifted. "We know you have a business." "You think I flip drinks for tips," I said. "Truth is, I built my first company out of a rented storage unit with $3,000 I saved on construction jobs. I've invested in 5 startups, exited 2, bought my first property at 29. Everything I own, I built." "And you think that makes you special?" Cynthia scoffed. "No," I said. "It makes me real." I turned to Melissa. "Remember the boutique you wanted in Over the Rhine? You were terrified the SBA would deny you." She barely nodded. "You didn't get that loan," I said quietly, "because you didn't need it. I fronted the money, every penny, and told you to say it was a private lender so you could feel like you did it yourself." Tara's jaw dropped. "I wrote your plan," I continued, "met the contractor, reviewed the lease. I never asked for credit because it wasn't about me." I looked back at Cynthia. Same with your husband's firm. He was drowning. I wrote the check. He made the quarter. I stayed quiet. That's not... And when Lindsay lost her scholarship sophomore year, I added, I covered the gap. Remember the anonymous donor you thanked in the family chat? Melissa stared. That was you? I nodded. From across the room, Marcus, lingering near the bar, called over. Ryan kept us afloat when a supplier fell through last year. If not for him, I'd have missed payroll. The table fell silent. You talk like I'm lucky to be here, I said. Like I tricked Melissa into a better life. You've got it backward. Cynthia tried to speak, and for once nothing came out. I didn't marry up, I said. You married into my future. I've carried this family from behind the curtain for years. No applause, no spotlight. I met each set of eyes. I'm done being quiet. I'm done acting like I got lucky. I'm not a background extra in your little dinner. I'm the reason it's happening. No one answered. For the first time, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like the beam holding the table up. Cynthia rallied, sitting straighter, gathering what pride remained. If that's all true, she said slowly, then why are you so comfortable? Melissa supports you, doesn't she? Melissa didn't move. Tara gasped. Lindsay blinked, stunned. Cynthia laced her fingers like a prosecutor. You dress well. You drive a new car. You have time. Sounds like my daughter's work funds your lifestyle. I laughed, because it was pathetic. I turned toward Melissa. Want to tell them where the down payment came from? She said nothing. Melissa, I said firmer, tell your mother. Silence. Fine, I said, exhaling. Every dollar for that house came from my early trade profits. I put 20% down before your business had its first customer. You didn't tell them because you wanted to seem independent. I let you, because I loved you. Melissa wilted. Tara whispered. Lindsay's eyes went wide. I invested in your brand, I said. Paid for the build-out. Signed the lease under my LLC so you'd qualify. And I never threw it in your face until now. Cynthia recoiled. Then, of course, she tried to pivot. Money isn't everything. What matters is who shows up. Who holds a family together? You? I asked. She didn't answer. You humiliated me, I said, the calm giving way. You staged a point. It backfired. Melissa finally spoke, barely above a whisper. I didn't think she'd actually exclude you. So you knew? I thought she'd cool off, she said, eyes down. She told me you wouldn't enjoy it. That it was for the girls. Nothing says sisterly bonding like stabbing your husband with a linen napkin, I said. No one moved. Wine sat untouched. Plates were full. The mood had curdled. This wasn't about food, I said, standing. It was about clarity. Melissa looked up. I held her gaze, tired, not angry. I'd already decided to walk, I said softly. Tonight just confirmed it. What does that mean? Cynthia asked, her voice unsteady. It means this performance wasn't the start of anything, I said. It was the end. Melissa's eyes glassed. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to shout, I added. I'm done. You're bluffing, Cynthia spat. No, I said. I'm free. I looked around the table one last time. I gave you chances. You proved me right. Then I left. No scene. No raised voice. Just the truth. Behind me, the table stayed quiet because they knew they hadn't pushed me too far. They'd lost the only person who gave them more than they deserved. The drive home was silent. No radio, no buzzing phone. Just the road unrolling in the headlights and my hands steady on the wheel. It was finished. Not the argument. We hadn't had one. The performance. The part of my life where I pretended I didn't see what I saw. I pulled into the driveway instead of the garage. Small choice, but deliberate. I wasn't planning to get comfortable. Inside, the house was dim and still, the faint lavender from Melissa's hallway diffuser softening the air. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight to the office. Bottom drawer, file cabinet, false front, a small safe. I punched in the code. Inside, contracts, banking records, stock certificates, the investment ledger for the boutique. The business was in Melissa's name. That had been important to her. The funding, however, wasn't a loan. I'd structured it as equity, 60%, clean, signed, dated. I set the folder on the desk and photographed every page, transfers, schedules, signatures. I pushed the set to the cloud and mirrored it to an external drive. No loose ends. No misplaced trust in people who had just shown me exactly who they were. The gray suitcase came down from the closet shelf, the one I used for business trips. I packed the way you wrap up a project that you've already mentally closed. 2 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, socks, laptop, watch, passport, the phone charger she always borrowed. I left half my closet hanging. I wasn't sneaking out. I was walking out. The suitcase waited by the door while I sat in the quiet living room and listened to the house breathe. 10:30. The key turned in the lock. Melissa came in on clicking heels, dropped her bag on the entry table, toed off her shoes like it was any other night. Then she saw me in the dark. Jesus, Ryan. Hey! Her eyes flicked to the suitcase. What are you doing? I stood. Leaving. You're serious? I was serious when I said it at dinner. I thought you were just mad, that you needed to cool off. Melissa, I've been cooling off for 5 years. She crossed her arms, summoning composure. So that's it? You're walking out over one bad dinner? I laughed once without humor. One bad dinner? You watched your mother mock me to my face and said nothing. You let her exclude me from a dinner I paid for at a restaurant I helped build. Do you hear yourself? She told me you weren't going to come, she said quickly. She said it was for the girls. I didn't know. Stop. I raised a hand. You know exactly what kind of woman your mother is. You set the stage and let her run it. Her gaze dropped. So now what? You just leave? I picked up the suitcase and set it by the door. I already have. She stared at me for a long beat. You're going to regret this. No, I said evenly. You are. She scoffed. You think you'll be fine without me? I slipped a document from my inside pocket, a signed summary of ownership. I own 60% of the boutique. Her face went slack. What? You asked for a loan. I gave you equity. You signed it. Twice. You didn't read the fine print because you trusted me, and I never used it against you until now. Ryan, I'm not taking your business, I said. I'm just done protecting it. You wanted separate? Fine. We're separate. She looked like she was searching for an angle and finding none. I opened the door. Goodbye, Melissa. I didn't slam it. I didn't need the noise. I'd taken the only thing they never imagined I'd take. My control. The morning after I left, I expected silence. What came was chaos. By the time I'd finished my first cup of coffee, my phone showed 17 missed calls. 5 from Melissa, 8 from her mother, the rest unknown. Probably her sisters or Cynthia's friends drafted into her latest crusade. I ignored all of them. Then the messages started. Melissa, we need to talk. Please. Melissa, I told Mom you were bluffing. Tell me you're not doing this. Melissa, you can't do this, Ryan. You don't even care about the boutique. Then Cynthia, straight to the jugular. Cynthia, you're a disgrace. You humiliated my family. You won't get away with this. I actually laughed at that one and out loud in my kitchen. An hour later, a call from her lawyer's firm, a big downtown outfit known for trust fund kids suing roommates over loud music. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted my own attorney, an old friend, someone I'd helped through a nasty property dispute years back. Me. Time to activate the exit plan. Boutique ownership clause is live. Him. Already drafting the memo. Let them swing first. That was the difference between Cynthia's world and mine. She thought wealth meant display. Last names, charity dinners, embossed invitations. I built mine in silence, in signatures, in clauses no one bothered to read. They never saw it coming because they never looked past the surface. By noon, Melissa shifted to guilt. Melissa, my employees are scared. They're asking if the store's closing. Don't punish them for our issues. Melissa, I never thought you'd turn into this version of yourself. Melissa, you promised me forever. Back when forever meant partnership. That afternoon, Cynthia stormed into the boutique to reassure the staff that everything was fine. She didn't realize one employee had already forwarded my signed document confirming the 60-40 split, and that I would be making all operational decisions until further notice. By evening, 2 of Melissa's most loyal employees resigned. Within a week, foot traffic dropped. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I didn't need to. When people sense the foundation is fake, they step back on their own. Melissa tried one last angle. Melissa, you don't want to go to court. Let's be adults. I replied with a photo of the investor agreement, her signature beside mine, the equity ratio circled in red, 60-40. No response. The next day her lawyer finally reached mine. They wanted to renegotiate the original terms. My attorney didn't even draft a reply. He just sent them the clause stating ownership was non-revocable in the event of divorce. They were stunned. They'd built their lives on the assumption that I would always be polite, dependable, containable, but I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. A few days later, a call came from the leasing office downtown, the same luxury condo Melissa and I almost leased 2 years earlier, before Cynthia called it too much space for a couple without kids. What they didn't know was that I'd quietly bought it last year, in my own name. When I arrived with my suitcase, the front desk manager smiled. "Mr. Bennett, your keys are ready." That night, I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, bourbon in hand, city lights stretching out like a clean slate. I played the last voicemail from Cynthia. "This isn't over, Ryan. You need us more than you think." I smiled. That was the real punchline. They never understood. I'd never needed them. They'd needed me. And now, they were on their own. 1 month later, I was on the balcony of my downtown penthouse. Morning light spilled over the skyline, soft and quiet. The air tasted clean. No tension, no expectation. Just silence that finally belonged to me. I'd finalized the divorce the week before. A clean break. No alimony. No shared assets. No strings. My lawyer made sure the boutique's equity documents were airtight. Melissa didn't contest them. Not really. I think she understood that fighting would only expose more truths. I left her the house, the furniture, even the ridiculous wedding china Cynthia insisted on registering for to keep up appearances. I kept what mattered, my portfolio, my properties, my peace. A few days after the papers were signed, Marcus called. "You finally did it," he said, voice carrying a hint of satisfaction. "Did what?" I asked. "Cut loose the anchor. I was always surprised you stayed with that family as long as you did." "You and me both," I said, laughing. He wasn't just calling to reminisce. He had an offer, a new venture, a high-end whiskey lounge in the heart of Nashville. "You helped build my first 3, Marcus said. "Now let's build one for you." I didn't even hesitate. "Send me the specs." That same week, Cynthia called again. I let it ring until voicemail picked it up. Then I blocked the number. The next day, she tried her sister's phone. Blocked that too. I wasn't interested in hearing an apology wrapped in poison. That bridge wasn't just burned. It was gone, paved over. A few days later, Melissa texted. "Melissa, can we talk?" 3 words. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of what she'd done. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then locked my phone and set it face down on the patio table. Some things don't need a reply. A week passed, then an alert from a finance monitoring service I still had tied to the boutique. Public notice. Chapter 11, Bankruptcy Filing. I wasn't surprised. Without my systems, the back end I'd built, the supplier contracts, the tax structure, her boutique was just a pretty storefront with a hollow foundation. I didn't celebrate, but I won't lie. I felt clear. I was finally out from under the shadow of a family that had never really seen me. No more pretending to be Melissa's quiet husband. No more waiting in the car while they played their roles. Now, when I walked into a room, it was on my terms. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the man who built his life from scratch and walked away when it no longer served him. The man who didn't beg for a seat at their table because he could buy the whole building next door. The one who didn't need approval from people who never earned his respect. And best of all, I hadn't just escaped their story. I'd started writing my own. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that makes the city feel half asleep. I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through the news. That's when I saw it. Buried deep in the Cincinnati Herald, under the business section, Peter Whitmore steps down as managing partner of Whitmore Investments amid financial restructuring. I clicked immediately. The article was short, bland corporate language, carefully worded damage control. Undisclosed financial difficulties. Temporary leadership adjustments. Strategic reorganization. But I knew better. I knew the exact loan that had come due, the same one they refinanced 2 years ago, the one I'd co-signed and quietly paid interest on to keep Peter's firm afloat. Without me, they couldn't make the payment. No more safety net. No more silent help. And now, no more firm. I set my phone down and leaned back in my chair. The sun was climbing higher. A soft breeze carried the faint hum of the city below. Up here it was different, peaceful, earned. They had spent years trying to shrink me down, to fit their version of who I was supposed to be. The harmless husband, the polite son-in-law, the man who should be grateful to sit at their table. But the truth? I'd been holding that table up the entire time. They thought they could write me out of the story, sideline me, erase me quietly between the lines of Melissa's curated life. But they underestimated the one thing that mattered most. I'd had the pen the whole time. I'd written checks with no name on them, signed contracts no one else bothered to read, sat through years of shallow smiles waiting for someone to see me. They never did. So I stopped waiting. I didn't burn their world down out of spite. I simply stopped patching the holes they pretended didn't exist. And when it all came crashing down, they finally saw my worth. Not because I shouted it, because I walked away. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Melissa. Melissa, I didn't know he was stepping down. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled. No reply. She still didn't understand. This wasn't about keeping up or staying informed or being part of their story anymore. This was about starting something new. Something that didn't need their approval, their validation, or their presence. They'd closed their circle, so I drew a new one. Wider, higher mine. And that right there, that was the real legacy. Not the money, not the ownership, the freedom. The final word was mine.